It is so YA in the most YA way that a YA book could be YA. Say that 5 times fast. Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nellie. If you haven't been here before, thank you for clicking on this video. I'm so excited to have you here, and if you have, you're rolling. Thanks for coming back. Excited to be doing my August reading wrap up. I normally don't film the reading wrap up until August is actually done because I want to be able to include every single book that I read. And this month was an absolutely crazy month of reading. I finished 19 books and I'm in the middle of 2 more. In the month of August, I also completed a series and I caught up to one that is ongoing, so I'm really excited about that. I also read a few new releases that I'm so excited to talk about, some that I loved and some that I didn't. Hopefully that will help you decide what to prioritize coming up. But with that being said, let's just jump right into it because I have a lot to talk about. The first book that I'm so excited to talk about that I finally read in the month of August is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a book that has always really intimidated me. It's been sitting on my shelf for a few months and I knew I wanted to read it because I loved The Great Alone by her so much, but I just knew how emotional The Great Alone was and I knew how emotional this was gonna be, and so I just got worried, kept putting it off, but I finally read it, and you guys, I'm so glad I did. This is hands down probably the best book I've ever read in my entire life. If you haven't heard of this book, which I'm sure you have, but you're not sure what it's about, this book follows 2 sisters during the Nazi occupation of France. This really paints a picture of what was happening in France, as I think a lot of education, specifically in the United States, focuses on what was happening in Germany at the time. So I've been really intrigued reading books that really show what was happening in other times of the world at the same time and really showing Hitler's influence throughout the world and not just in Germany. In this book, we are following 2 sisters, Vianne and Isabel. I actually filmed a reading vlog filming this. You guys should really go watch it because I go really in depth with this. But what I loved about this is the way that this story is told through 2 different lenses. The lens of a mother who's trying to protect her child and is just doing anything that she can to keep the focus off of her and her family to keep her daughter safe. And then we have Isabel, who's the younger sister, who is really interested in being a player that's at the forefront of the French rebellion against the Nazis. And we see her putting herself in dangerous situations to really propel this rebellion forward. This book is about love, loss, heartbreak, and overcoming really difficult things. I feel like Kristen Hanna is just a master at having you experience the past in a way that feels so new, in a way that feels like it's happening right now, and it really makes you question a lot of things about yourself and what you would do if you were in the same situation. If there's ever a book that I could recommend to you on my channel, please read The Nightingale. I swear it will change your life. I want to continue on that same vein, talking to you about the second book, because it actually was also a World War II historical fiction, which is so funny because I primarily read a lot of fantasy and some romance, but this was a book club book, and actually reading this book was what really propelled me to just reading The Nightingale next, and that is Ashes in the Snow, also called Between Shades of Grey, I believe, in other prints. But this is actually what is happening in Lithuania during the time of World War II and how the educated people, is it Stalin that is? Yes, it's Stalin at the time. He was in power and he was essentially taking all of the educated people in Lithuania and sending them to labor camps, maybe I should call them. Maybe that's the right word. But he was sending them to labor camps and they were just experiencing horrible things. And these people were not even Jewish, okay? Which is what is so interesting to me about the gaps in our education system currently, because I, again, only thought that things were happening in Germany. I thought it was happening only to the Jewish people, which obviously they suffered so much. I don't want to take away from their suffering, but it's really interesting to read about things like this, about what was happening to the people of Lithuania, about how they had to suffer in silence, and how still what happened to the people of Lithuania is not talked about, and it is basically a silent, secret part of history. But we are following our main character, who I believe she's 15 or 16 at the time of this. We're seeing it through her eyes of what is happening to her mother. She is traveling with her mother and sister to a labor camp, and just the horrible things that she sees, but also the hope that she sees in these camps where these survivors are really banding together to take care of each other. And again, it's another book that makes you ask the question of what would you do to survive, and also what would you do to help the other people who are also suffering around you? I also gave this book 5 stars. I will say that this book did have a bit of a slower start, but once you really got into the story, I feel like it just was so emotional and so beautifully told that I couldn't give it anything less than a 5 stars. They're extremely short chapters. I believe this book has like 80 something chapters, and it only has 338 pages. So it's definitely a shorter book. It's very fast paced. It covers a lot of ground, and it was just a really beautifully told book. So if you're also in your historical fiction era, this is a great, great choice. I guess we're just gonna keep going with another book that I rated 5 stars, but it's totally in a different genre, and that is romance, and it was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I had been hearing really great things about Mariana Zapata, and I also read this in a reading vlog if you want to hear more about that. But I had been really excited to read her books because I've heard she's the queen of slow burn, and so I got really excited to find this used copy at my local bookstore. And when I say this, she's the queen of slow, the best way that I can describe this is that this book has a total of 460 pages in this copy, because I feel like the copies with the other covers have like 600 pages, but this one has just under 500 pages. And I want to say the actual physical romance that we got happened in the last little bit of this story. But here's the thing. She was giving you crumbs throughout, and I was eating them up like it was an entire feast. This book was absolutely for me. I love a slow burn, a true slow burn. And that's what this was throughout this whole story. You're just like picking up on these little hints, and then finally when you get to the end, you're just like, yes, this is everything I wanted and more. And this was made so much more enjoyable and so much more impactful because it was a true slow burn. We really didn't get the payoff until the end of this book, but I gave it 5 stars because I was here for it. I was here for it. Definitely recommend this book. It has made me so excited to get into more of her writing because, again, I'm a slow burn girly and I live for it. Okay, next I want to talk about a series that I actually started and finished this month, and I think you guys will be so excited about it because it is a very, very beloved series. It's talked about a lot, so I'm excited to give you my point of view on what I thought about this, and that is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart earlier in the month, so I want to talk about this first because I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It was very whimsical. It was very much reminiscent of Caraval in a different way, but very atmospheric, very whimsical, just like Caraval was. It takes place in the same world, and we have our main character, Evangeline, who she goes and prays in the temple, I guess, of the Prince of Hearts, who is Jax, who is essentially kind of like a god, but they're called fates in this book. You're introduced to him, I believe, in the second book of the Caraval series, but she goes and she essentially prays or wishes in this temple because the love of her life is getting married to someone else, and it's actually her stepsister, and she wants Jax to stop the wedding, and he does, but he does it in a very cruel way. And that is just kind of the pattern throughout this book and throughout this series, is just you see our 2 main characters who are working together for, I wouldn't even say a common goal. It's really to satisfy Jax's ends. And it just, with him being a fate, with him not being human, he just sees things really differently. He makes choices that to us seem really cruel, but when you think about how he's a fate and he is fated to kill every single girl that he kisses with his kiss is deadly, I mean. So if you think about that, somebody who's lived for hundreds of years and who just so desperately wants to fall in love at his core, but anybody that he kisses dies, like if you think about that, like what would that do to a person, right? And so he's become very cruel. He really does only things that suit his own purposes, and some of the things that he does to Evangeline do seem very cruel. Again, this is a YA series, so the cruelty is not, like, I wouldn't say it was dark, but there definitely are choices that he makes that you're kind of like, wow, that is so horrible. I gave this book 4 stars. I did enjoy it, but I really was excited to get to the second book in the series, which is A Ballad of Never After. Now, this is supposed to be a god tier book for a lot of people who've read this series. I also gave this book 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I really did. But I think my only issue with this series, and it did kind of continue into A Curse for True Love, and I don't even know that it's an issue, it's that this book was really made for the reader that I was 7 to 10 years ago. Obviously, I'm 30. I'm turning 31 this year. And so this month, actually. This is for the younger reader in me who really enjoyed a female main character who was more innocent, maybe more two-dimensional. I wouldn't have minded that back then. But I think that's my thing, is that with Evangeline, she was so innocent and she just had this compass that was this is right, this is wrong, didn't really understand the gray area in life. And I'm not saying I wanted her to be corrupted, because that's not what I'm saying, but I just enjoy a female main character who's a lot more layered, who understands, or who's just a lot more nuanced. That's my only issue with this series. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, you can see the tabs in the second and third book. I would say that the third book was probably my favorite, which is so interesting because they added a POV to the third book that I was just kind of like, I don't care about this guy. I just want to read about Evangeline and Jax. I just want to see where their story is continuing, especially after a plot twist at the end of book 2. I was just like, how are we gonna overcome this? I just want to get to the end of their story. I want to see if they're going to be living happily ever after. I just want to know how they're going to overcome these issues. But yeah, I ended up loving that book actually, because I just liked the direction that it took. I can't say too much because I'm not going to spoil it. But do I think this series was definitely worth the read? Yes. Did I give the last book in the series 4.5 stars? Yes, also yes. Do I think this book is super whimsical and magical? Yes. I really think that this is a great series to read. I highly recommend it. And I actually really recommend reading this series back to back. As I was reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, I just kept thinking, you know what? I should just continue in the series. It's been so long since I binged a series and just read them back to back to back. There were a few books in between the first and the second book for me that I did read, obviously not part of this series. But once I read the second book, I was just like, you know what the heck? I'm just going to go ahead into the third book in the series, and I really enjoyed that. I really think it gave me the best reading experience. I really enjoyed this, and I feel like one day I'm going to want to reread these. I just had a great time. I think if you have somebody who loves cozy fantasy, but you also want a bit of a morally gray character, this was the perfect marriage of them both. The next series that I started and finished, well, I should say there's going to be more books in the series, but I did start and finish both of the installments that are currently available to read, is the Monsters and Men series by Mia Sheridan. It starts with Unwanted and goes into Unnatural. Now, this series is so interesting. I haven't given any of these books 5 stars, but yet I can't stop thinking about them, so maybe my rating needs to go up. The first book I gave 3.75 stars, and then the second book I'm giving a 4 star. But let me tell you about them first. I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Let me just start with the first book. But in the first book, we have a murder mystery, and the prime suspect is this man who's picked up on the side of the road. He's huge. He's like an absolute Goliath, and he's in his mid-20s at the point of this book, but he was raised in the woods by himself. Like, no adults ever helped him. They basically had him fend for himself. And so he has known a very different life than a lot of us have, and definitely different than our main character. Our main character, Harper, she is a forest ranger, and she's brought in to weigh in on this murder that happened because it happened out in the woods and nobody knows the terrain like she does. She ends up meeting our male main character, Lucas, and just being very, very intrigued by him. And it sparks a love story between the two of them. I loved the love story, but what really intrigued me is there's just like this big conspiracy happening where there are these scientists / government contractors who are doing experiments kind of illegally on children, trying to make these elite super soldiers who just follow commands, who are stronger and faster than anybody else. And Lucas is a part of this program without even knowing. They essentially throw him to the wolves to grow up and be strong. And that continues in our next book, which is Unnatural. And in Unnatural, we're following obviously a different female main character and a different male main character, and it's kind of the same thing. Both of these people, our female main character is essentially a survivor of this really horrible disease that was brought on by a drug that ran rampant, and then our male main character, he was also raised in a different way than our male main character in this book, but he was raised and essentially modified to be, again, this super soldier kind of a deal. So it's kind of like Captain America, but on steroids and very much more hush hush. I was just so intrigued by that concept. Like, I cannot wait to see where it goes. I can't wait to meet the next characters in these series. They obviously have to overcome a lot, specifically the male main characters, because they were just raised to not trust anybody. They were raised very solitary, but then they meet these women that they just fall in love with, will do anything for, and will protect, like, will literally lay down their lives to protect. And I love that concept. So I really enjoyed these books. If I bumped it up a little bit, I'd say this is a 4-star series for me as well. I just really enjoyed it. I'm so intrigued by it, and I cannot wait to continue in the series. I don't even know if the next book has been announced because Unnatural just came out this month, but loved it, excited for it, here for it. Then I read a fairly new release, The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Bridget Knightley. Here's the thing, it's so funny because I see on Goodreads that this book doesn't have the best reviews. Like, I would say it's in the high 3s, and I've heard just some people be like, it's not really what I was expecting or what I wanted. So I went into that with those thoughts, but here's the thing, I loved this book. I loved the humor. It is definitely primarily kind of like a rom-com, but it's a fantasy rom-com. We have our male main character. His name is Osric Mordaunt, and he is an assassin. He's part of an order of assassins. They obviously kill people for money, but their order is looked down upon by other orders, specifically the Healer Order, the Firen Order, which our main character Orienne is a part of. And the thing is, Osric ends up being wounded, and his what they call Saith system, which is the channels in your body that allow you to use your magic, is damaged, and it is just getting worse, and eventually it's going to cause him to not be able to use his magic, which is going to end his life at that point. He ends up coming to Orienne to beg / bribe / threaten her into helping him, healing him. She's basically the brightest of all of the healers, and every other healer hasn't been able to help him, and so she ends up being coerced into helping him, which they don't even know if there's really a cure for what he needs. So far, they don't think so, but he is so desperate, and he has something that her order needs, which is money to be able to continue to fund their research for a disease that is killing children. So the two of them are working together, unwillingly, obviously, to try to heal him, but there's also some conspiracies with other things happening, specifically with this disease, why it's killing these children, why it's killing only children, why will nobody give them money to fund this research, like why are the heads of all these different cities not helping? Very, very interesting. But really for me, it was just the wit and the banter. This is the wittiest banter that you will read. It's almost like a very British, I would say, humor as far as like just the wit and banter. I absolutely loved it. It's definitely more adult as far as the humor, but I loved it. I ate it up. I had such a great time. I gave it 5 stars. Here's the thing about me. If I'm entertained, if you can make me laugh, if you can make me feel during a story, I'm gonna rate it well. And this one for me, I just loved it. I can't wait for the next book, and it's killing me that this is not getting the hype that it deserves. It kills me. And I think it's just because it's different. And I think even though people say that they want something different in their fantasies, they don't really. They want the same thing. They want the same thing that's going to hit every time, and this is different again. It's just incredible. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. 5 stars. I also read an indie published book this month, and it was very timely for me, and it's called He Answers to Grief, and it is by Courtney Leach. And she sent me this book a few months ago, and I was so excited to save it for this month because in the month of August, our family has kind of like a grief anniversary that's hard for us, obviously. And so I read this book. It's very short. It's a novella, but it's about a woman who is having a really hard time accepting and moving on from the death of her father. And one day, this dog just shows up on her porch. She ends up naming it Grief. And this dog just is there for her as she moves on and just tries to move on from her dad's death. It was just a really beautiful story about the complexities of grief and how everybody grieves differently and on different timelines, and just about the hope that there is at the end of the tunnel. So if you're somebody who's experienced grief, I think that you would really, really enjoy this book. I highly recommend this book. It's a hard one to rate. I feel like novellas are really hard for me to rate. I felt like for me, it was so short and sweet and perfect that I really couldn't find any fault with it. I feel kind of crazy in telling you guys that I also rated this 5 stars, but I did. I just had such a good reading month. Like, I think only a few of these, 3-ish of these, 3 or 4 of all of the books that I read ended up as less than a 4-star, but I think it's also because I've learned my taste a lot better, and so the books that I'm rating them higher because I'm already knowing when I hear about a book whether or not I'm gonna enjoy it. So take that as you will. Okay, next, this month I also read a very popular book talk fantasy romance, and that is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Ariu. I did enjoy this book. This book is about our main character Alara, and she has been cursed essentially by a prophecy that it says that she will fall in love with the King of Stars, and it will be both of their undoing. This love essentially will kill them both, and so she has been hunted by the King of Stars, which is Ariete. he's been hunting her. He kills her family. He is taking over her kingdom, and she ends up being able to escape and then subsequently be kidnapped by a neighboring kingdom, which is the kingdom of Helios, because she is from the kingdom of night, I want to say. It's like perpetually night in her kingdom. So yes, it's the kingdom of light that ends up kidnapping her, and they essentially want to use her as a weapon against this god who's also hunting her. This king orders his son, who's essentially like a warrior prince, to train her to be able to use her magic to become a weapon. And there's a little bit of enemies to lovers in this book. I don't want to say much more than that, but I will say for me, the first half of the book was just okay. I was enjoying it, I didn't love it, and then the rest of it really picked up the pacing for me and made me more excited in reading this book, more invested. I liked the twists and turns that it took. I did end up enjoying it. The first half of the book, I thought it was going to be 3.5 stars, and then the second half of the book really made up for it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I'm excited for the next one, which I think is coming out later this year, but I'm going to continue in the series. It was a good time. Wasn't the best fantasy. I think it's a little overhyped in my opinion, but I did enjoy it. I had a good time. I'm going to continue in the series. Speaking of overhyped, you guys, I have to, unfortunately, tell you about a book that I really, really did not like, and that is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. I recently read this in a reading blog. If you want to hear more about it and watch my live reactions, then you could definitely watch that there. But I ended up giving this book like a 1 star, less than a 2 stars. I just did not like this book. I felt like it was very try hard for me. I know that we were doing a religious retelling, but I felt like the way that this world was built, just in the world building, it was just so crammed with religious terms and things like that, that again, it just felt very try hard for me. For example, and I mentioned this in the vlog, but even the pizza place was called the Sons of Adam. Did we really need that? I just did not like this book. It also just contained some of the most despicable characters, just horrible. If you think of the lowest of the low, like the worst possible men on the planet, what they do to other people, they were included in this. And that was really hard for me to read, and it's not something that I enjoy reading. It's a book with a lot of rage towards religion, and you can tell that throughout the whole thing. And another thing that bothered me, okay, I'm really not trying to knock this book, but you could just probably tell I really didn't like it. Our female main character got herself into the worst situations. She had no sense of self-preservation, and she could never get herself out of those situations. She always had to have a guy come and save her. And I'm like, come on, girl. It just really bothered me. The only thing I liked about this book, the redeeming quality, was the male main character, and I'm gonna find a photo of him because this book, this copy, came with just Velma that I absolutely loved. But here we go. Here's the thing. If I was gonna write a fantasy romance, he would look exactly like this. He would look exactly like this, like that. It's a bit of me. I loved his character. I really liked that they had been friends pretty much their entire lives, but obviously with her position, with her parents' position, she was always untouchable to him. But he was so supportive. He was always there for her, again, rescuing her out of the dumbest situations that she got herself in over and over again. Just loved him, but I really did not like this book, guys. I started with like a 2.75 rating, and then it just went down from there because the more I read of this book and the more I mulled on it afterwards, the angrier it got. I just didn't like it at all. I'm so sorry if you loved this book. It was not for me, might be for you, but it was not for me, and it's a book that I'm going to be unhauling. Another fantasy romance that I read this month was Cruel is the Light, and I really enjoyed this book. I just love a book that has a concept of angels and demons, and in this book, I really liked that our female main character was just this badass woman. She was the warrior. She's basically an elite demon hunter. I can't remember the name that they use. I think they call them exorcists, but they're demon hunters is what they are. I read this book because it was supposed to be for fans of K-pop demon hunters, and I could totally see where the similarities are. I would say this is an unlikely allies to lovers somewhat. I also really liked our male main character in this. He was more of a soldier and a grunt, and eventually their paths cross in just a really interesting way, and they end up working together to unveil some corruption, I guess, that is in this church. I liked the story. I like where it was going. I liked our characters. The biggest problem I had was the pacing in this book, and the pacing itself was really affected by the amount of times that the ooh, bless me. It was really affected by the amount of times that the author switched POVs. She switched POVs so often, even sometimes in the middle of a conversation, that you were kind of like, hold on, what? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I think it took me out of the story a bit, and for that reason, that's why I ended up rating it 3.75 stars. However, I did think it got better as it went on, and I'm still going to continue in this next book in the series because I'm intrigued and I had a good time. This month, I also made it to my library to pick out some really good books, and I read, I think, was it 3 library books? 4. I read 4 books from the library that I enjoyed. The first one was Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout. The reason why I picked this book, the reason why I got it off the shelf, is because I saw that somebody said that the yearning in this book was really, really good. Here's the thing. It is so YA in the most YA way that a YA book could be YA. Say that 5 times fast. That it just took me out of it. I think I would have really enjoyed this early high school, and I'm well out of that time. It was kind of one of those, it's a YA romance where the boy likes the girl, but he has to be mean to her because that's how he expresses how he likes her. It wasn't for me. Yeah, for me, it wasn't showing yearning. For me, it was a little too immature. So I'm not going to be continuing in the series. I pushed myself to the end. I'm glad I got to the end. I'm satisfied with what it was. I ended up giving it a 2.75. It wasn't the worst book, but just the writing, it just wasn't there for me. I didn't connect with it. I didn't connect with the characters. They just weren't relatable to me in any way. And so, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. If you like aliens, might be for you. Then I read Heart of the Sun by Mia Sheridan, and this was a dystopian romance. I think this was her first foray into dystopian romance, and what's interesting is when you read the acknowledgments in the back, I believe her publisher actually presented her with the plot, essentially, of this book, and she wrote it and fleshed it out, which is really interesting. I don't think I've read a book, at least that I know of, like that before, where the idea didn't come from the author itself, which is interesting. But it's a bodyguard romance. It's also a second chance romance, and that I really liked of it. Our 2 main characters were friends when they were younger. Our male main character's mom passes away, and it just sets him off on a path where he ends up being in jail, but when he comes out of jail, he really just needs a second chance. He can't get a job because he's an ex-con, and he ends up getting a job as his childhood love's bodyguard because she's now a famous singer. And he ends up joining her and her boyfriend on a plane ride because they were going on a private plane for some type of event. But this dystopian event occurs where just everything shuts off, like phones, planes, cars, and they fall out of the sky, and it ends up being the 3 of them trying to re-find civilization, and it was interesting. I do like dystopian, but I felt like where this one missed for me is, first of all, the boyfriend being there the whole time was so annoying. I'm like, get this guy out of here. His character I really didn't enjoy, and he was just with them for far too long. And the female main character, up until about the midway point, really, really bothered me. I liked our male main character. I liked where the story went. I liked how it ended, but it was just all right. I gave it a 3.5. It was interesting. It was a good read, but yeah, nothing to write home about. It's not a book that I would buy. After that, I ended up reading Silver Cloak by L.K. Stephen. This is by the same author who wrote Our Infinite Fates. I haven't read that book yet, but this is just her adult debut. I really enjoyed this book. I felt like the world building was really, really great. The magic system was cool. They use wands, which I haven't read about people using wands since Harry Potter. Overall, it was a really great read. First of all, we have our female main character who her parents were killed in front of her as a child, and she ends up, because of that, training to be kind of like a magical police person in this world. That's what I would relate it to. She ends up going undercover and working in this rebel group called the Blood Moons, I want to say, are the people who killed her parents. And so she gets the opportunity to go undercover, and while there, she ends up getting really close to the Blood Moon boss's son. And I can't say much more than that because this book takes you on twists and turns, and it would be a spoiler if I spoke on that. I really like where the plot went. There were just a few things in this book that put me off, and I can't really put my finger on it, but I really enjoyed it. I think it was very different than a lot of the fantasy books that have come out lately, and I really, really appreciated that. I liked her writing. I liked how gritty this was. This was like a dark, gritty fantasy, which I really liked. I don't read a ton of those. And the cliffhanger at the end, excuse me, I need the next book immediately. The last library book that I ended up reading, and arguably my favorite, was A Forbidden Alchemy, and that is by Stacey McEwen. Now, I knew I was gonna love this book because everybody kept saying, if you are a fan of Peaky Blinders, you need to read this book, because it is basically Peaky Blinders meets Six of Crows kind of a thing. And I love Six of Crows, so this book did exactly what I wanted it to do. Our male main character is Tommy Shelby. He is Tommy Shelby, and he even has the family, like the brothers. Instead of the aunt, like Aunt Polly, his mom is there, and I just loved it. I think it made a great audiobook. The accents, the family dynamics, it was so good. We're actually following our female main character more than anybody in this book, and she essentially, in this world, when kids are 11, they go to the capital to be tested for magic, and if you have magic, you stay there and you go to this academy and develop your skills, and if you don't, you're sent back. And our two main characters, our female main character and our male main character, what is her name? I can't remember her name. Her name is, come on, Nina. Okay, Nina's our female main character and Patrick is our male main character. The two of them meet as they're waiting to be tested, and they literally stumble upon this secret about how the kids with magic manifest. And ever since then, so Nina ends up staying and Patrick ends up going back home, which he said even if he had magic, he was going to go back home to his mining town. And Nina ends up staying and being a part of this academy. She has this rare form of magic where they just want to use her to basically crush this rebellion, which Patrick grows up to be a part of. And when their paths cross, I just was so bought into the story. I felt like the plot just got so good at that point, and there were, again, some twists and turns I didn't necessarily see coming, and I really appreciate that because I feel like a lot of the times you can't surprise me anymore. I've seen it all, but I really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I didn't really have any complaints about this book. I really enjoyed it. So really excited to see where this one goes because, again, I just need the next book in the series. I need the next book in the series. Also this month, I started a new series, and it is on Abby Jimenez's backlist, but it starts with The Friend Zone. I enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 3.75 stars. It was a good book overall. This is the first book that I've rated under 4 stars by Abby Jimenez. In fact, most of her books, I think I've given 5 stars. So, bit of an outlier, this one, but I still felt like it had the Abby Jimenez feel, mostly the middle to the end. I felt like there were parts in the first part of the book that I was kind of like, I'm having a good time, but where is the Abby Jimenez that I, know and love? But this is essentially about our female main character who has a chronic illness, which will lead her to not be able to have children. So while she's suffering, really in pain with this chronic illness, she is going to be a maid of honor for her absolute best friend in the entire world. And the best man of her best friend's fiance, follow me there, is our male main character. She ends up crossing paths with him. His name is Josh, and she's just really connecting with him. They're really, really getting along, and honestly, he's just like the perfect guy for her, but he really wants a big family. He wants to have kids, and she does not want to tell him. He doesn't know that she is facing all of these chronic illnesses or that she's not going to be able to have children, and she keeps that from him and forces him into the friend zone, obviously the title of this book, because she doesn't want him to have to give up that for her. And so this is just about their story. It's about her learning to open up, and it's about both of them learning what their happily ever after looks like together. I did enjoy this book. I definitely liked the second half of it. The second half of it was like almost 5-star material for me, but just the first half of it lacked a bit. And then the other thing was I did feel like the miscommunication went on a bit too long for me as well. I felt like the main character should have just come clean and they could have worked on it from there, or they could have just decided to mutually part ways after that. The one thing I will say is I'm so stoked about the next book. I think the next book in this series, the Happy Ever After playlist, is for me going to be a 5-star prediction because of events that happened in this book. So if you're going to read Happy Ever After, you need to read this book first, because if not, it's going to get spoiled. I would still recommend this book, and I'm excited to continue reading more of this series. I just will read anything that Abby Jimenez writes. I just will. All right, then I read Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. This was part of a really fun reading vlog where I used Taylor Swift lyrics to have my friends blind pick my reads. So if you haven't watched that, you should. This was a bit of a dark horse for me. I did not realize I was going to love this book as much as I was. This is kind of like a historical fiction / love story / mystery. And I loved the combination of that. I really, really did. I also listened to part of this on audio. I thought it made a great audiobook. This is about our main, what's her name? I already forgot her name. What is wrong with me and names today? Beth. This is going through a few timelines, but in the present time, there is a trial occurring, and the person that she loves is on trial, and you don't know why, but all you know is she's just really, really hoping that he is found not guilty. And you don't know who this man is because we're learning about her husband, Frank, who is basically the best guy ever. He's just amazing, and he picked up the pieces of her and just loved her back to being whole after the childhood love of her life, her first love, and her broke up, and she was just destroyed after it. So we're getting a past timeline of Beth and Gabriel, her childhood first love, Beth and Frank, her husband, and the trial, which there is the man she loves on trial and you don't know which one it is. And so it's just very complicated, very messy. I don't agree with a lot of the choices that our female main character makes, but I still was just hooked. This is one of those books that I could not stop thinking about it when I put the book down at night, or even like when I was doing other things about the day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I normally am able to switch between two books. Like if I'm reading something of this genre, I could read a fantasy book. I had to stop reading my fantasy book because I just couldn't get my head out of this world and into that one. I was hooked on this book. So I really enjoyed it. I feel like this book is so worth the hype. I've heard a lot of hype. I ended up also giving this book 5 stars. Holy cow, I need to count how many 5-star books I gave in this month because it was quite a few. I just had a really good month of reading. Really enjoyed this. I think this would be the perfect fall book. It's giving October, it's giving November. So if you haven't read this, definitely give it a try. The last book that I finished was probably my favorite read this month, other than The Nightingale, and that was Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I got so incredibly lucky and got chosen to receive an e-arc of this book, and I've talked about Rebecca Ross before. I love her books. I've raved about Divine Rivals, and you guys know if you've watched my September TBR that A Fire Endless. The second book in the Elements of Cadence duology is on my TBR. Can't wait to read that. It just has this way of writing mystical, lush tales that are just so expertly woven and crafted. They're so deeply romantic in a world where I feel like we're losing the plot on romance and we're really just pushing the lust and the physical chemistry. She just does yearning and she does romance like nobody else. But I loved this book. This is in the Divine Rivals universe. It takes place quite a bit before. We have our main character, Matilda, who is a goddess, and she is a goddess of not only the underrealm, but also the skyward realm, which gods and goddesses from the skyward realm and gods and goddesses from the underrealm don't really mix. And so she's a child of both worlds, and she has a magic that is a messenger magic. She travels between all of the realms to deliver messages, and her life ends up being intertwined with this boy, Vincent, in the mortal world who dreams about her. And she often carries scrolls of dreams from the goddess of dreams and nightmares, I want to say. She is reading about these dreams where she's a part of them and ends up even stepping into some of these dreams. I'm probably explaining this terribly, but basically what happens is she ends up disappearing from Vincent's life and from Vincent's dreams when they are both children. He ends up growing up and becoming a very irreverent mortal man where he does not really pray or worship the gods or goddesses. He doesn't have a good view of them, and he's all but forgotten about Matilda until one day she stumbles through his window with a message for him, and it all just goes from there. This story, this romance is just so achingly beautiful, you guys. I need you all to read it. I love her writing. Her writing is like no other. It's just the most perfect, beautiful book, and I will definitely be buying a physical copy this month for my birthday because I thought it was so beautiful. Wow, we've talked about 19 books. Can you believe it? Woo! I've been yapping for like almost an hour at this point, so we'll see how long this ends up being. But the last 2 books I wanted to talk about are books I'm currently in the middle of. I first wanted to talk about Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And here's the thing, I'm about a third of the way through it. I've been a third of the way through it for about a month now. And I was really interested in this book because it was said to be like Six of Crows, Throne of Glass. I think that he is a really great storyteller, specifically with his characters and just the magic system. It's so cool in here. It has to do with metals. Here's the thing. I don't know if Brandon Sanderson's writing is for me. I think he's very wordy. I think he over-explains, and I think he is writing the most interesting story the least interesting way possible for me, and it's because of his overuse of words. And I feel bad saying that because I know that a lot of people love his writing, and I need your help to know if I should just push through. I think his writing is not for me, but his stories are. Like, I think his stories are so interesting, and I like the characters, and I like the rebellion that's happening, and I like the magic system. But every night when I closed this book, I didn't want to reopen it the next day. That's where I'm struggling, so I need your help. Let me know, do I just need to buckle down and finish it, or do I just not continue it? I am generally of the opinion that life's too short to read books that don't completely just have you by the throat and intrigue you. And so that's where I'm struggling right now with this. But I think I'm going to just put it down for a while and then pick it back up and recommit to it maybe later this fall. We'll see. You guys let me know. The other book that I'm currently in the middle of that I am so excited to finish reading and that I absolutely love is Magnolia Parks. Here's the thing. This book reads like a Taylor Swift song. It's like the quotes that she comes up with, I just can't. Like, I can hear them in my head being part of a Taylor Swift song. For example, her eyes right now, all raw and weighed down the same way mine are, they anchor us to the seabed of whatever the hell we are and were and will be. And I wonder what love is like for other people. Is love for everyone wordless exchanges and a million memories that F you up to the bone? You guys, like, it's just, I can't. I could read you a million more quotes out of this book. Like, I'm literally looking through and I'm like, which one? Because there's so many good ones. Everything wonderful, everything magical, everything painful, everything beautiful and spectacular and wretched and defining that has happened to me happened with him, and I hate him for that. So it doesn't matter if I love him, which I don't, but if I did, it doesn't matter even now, because loving him is the same thing as tossing the keys to my heart to a valet without a driver's license. He'll drive me off a cliff. Come on, loving him is red. I mean, do you not get read by Taylor Swift with that? It's just so good. It's so good. I will say that is what I'm loving about this book. It is quite frustrating as far as these two people who are on again, off again, and you're just like, why can you guys just not stop being horrible to each other? Like, she dates other people to keep him at bay, and he sleeps with other people to get back at her, and it's just this vicious cycle, and it's heartbreaking to read about, but let me tell you, I'm having a great time. I'm having a great time. So I'm definitely gonna finish this very shortly. I love the audiobook. I think they picked the perfect narrators for this, specifically Magnolia. Like, she is exactly what I would have pictured her sounding like, but I'm also annotating, so I'm like listening to it while I pack, but then I have to run and stop the audio so that I can just annotate it. It's so freaking good. So super excited. This is a 5-star prediction for me, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, and with that, we've talked about 21 books, y'all. That was crazy. I've been talking for over an hour, and you guys will have to let me know. Do you like me more going through every single book I read in the month? Or do you prefer me just talking about the books that I really, really liked and keeping them shorter? You'll have to let me know in the comments below. Speaking of which, if you made it to the end of this video, pat yourself on the back, girl. That is crazy, because this video, I'm sure, is gonna be so long. And if you've made it to the end, leave me a bird emoji for the nightingale, because that might have been the big winner of this month. And let me know the best book that you read in the last month, because I want to know. I really do. I will probably add it to my TBR because I have FOMO. I do. I just am a person who has that with books. Anyways, guys, I love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. As always, if there's anything specific you want to see from me, let me know in the comments below, because I love to hear from you guys. And with that, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.